Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to tonight's Planning Committee meeting. I certainly declare the meeting open. There is a live streaming statement. This meeting is being broadcast on the internet, and the recording of the meeting will be published on Council's website. The committee also acknowledges the Wadawurrung people as traditional owners of the land, waterways and skies. We pay our respects to the elders past, present and emerging. We acknowledge all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are part of our greater Geelong community. I'd like to introduce the panel. Myself, Councillor Andrew Kados as the Chair, Councillor Melissa Cadwell, Councillor Anthony Aitken, Mayor Councillor Stretch Contell, Deputy Mayor Councillor Ron Nelson, Councillor Chris Burson and Councillor Eddie Contell. And also we have the officers who are present tonight. We have Verity Bright, Rory O'Loughlin, John Rush, Joanne Van Slageren here, James Sturton, Jacqueline Douglas, Danielle Pangrazio and Tessa English. We have apologies from Councillors Story, Sullivan, Wilkinson and Sinclair. Are there any declarations of conflicts of interest from either the councillors or officers? No. All good? Thank you. So confirmation of minutes of the previous meeting, that the minutes of the Planning Committee held on the 23rd of October this year be confirmed. May I please have a mover and seconder to confirm the minutes of the council meeting held on the 23rd of October this year? Councillor Aitken and seconder Councillor Stretch Contell. All those in favour? That is carried. Just better write my notes. Okay. So with regard to the procedure for the meeting this evening, the officer, which is Verity Bright, will present a summary of the written report to the committee. The panel may ask questions of the officer, and bear in mind it's for the councillors to ask questions. The objectors and submitters will detail their concerns to the committee, and there's a 3-minute time limit for all objectors and submitters. And just on that, you had to be actually have a written submission either objecting or supporting the application to be able to speak this evening. So I just want to make that clear to everyone in the room. The panel may also ask questions of the objector and submitter. The applicant will then detail their application and respond to any objector or submitter concerns to the committee, and approximately 5 to 10 minutes for the applicant. Again, the panel may ask questions of the applicant. The panel will then further discuss the application and make a decision. And just to reiterate, it's for the councillors to ask questions. It's not a forum for debate amongst everybody. So the decision of this committee is actually a final decision of council acting under delegated authority. If anyone is aggrieved with the decision of this committee, they may appeal to VCAT in Melbourne, and our staff would be more than happy to assist you with that process during office hours. So I'd like to call on our planning officer, Verity Bright, to give us a summary of the recommendation. Thank you, Verity.
Thank you, Chair. We are considering the planning application at 325 Forest Road North, Lara, which has a total of 16 hectares. The site is within a farming zone and is partially affected by the bushfire management overlay in the southeastern corner of the site. Currently, the site is partially being used for caravan and boat storage, which has grown far beyond what has previously been allowed. The remainder of the site is used to house horses and raise horses, which is an agricultural land use. The application is for the use and development for a camping and caravan park, including the removal of native vegetation. The development proposes 56 cabins, 48 caravan sites and 14 tent sites. The cabins will range from 1, 2 and 3 bedroom options. At 100% capacity, acknowledging that this won't be all the time, it is expected there will be 365 people on the site. The development also has a range of other buildings, including a reception building with a shop, a manager's dwelling, camp kitchens, amenity facilities, barbecue shelters and storage buildings. The application also seeks retrospective approval for 4 cabins that were constructed around 2017 without any relevant permissions. Public notice was undertaken by the way of a sign on site and letters to the adjoining owners and occupiers, with a total of 12 objections received. 15 letters of support were lodged, which encouraged the application as it would benefit the small businesses within Lara. The common and repeated concerns from the 12 objectors who would join the subject site include an increase in traffic, visual and environmental impacts, impacts to the rural character, impacts to the water pressure and how this might affect the existing farms, incompatible land uses, and issues relating to drainage and flooding. All adjoining properties are currently being used for farming purposes. The application was referred to the EPA, CFA, Parks Victoria, and the Department of Energy, Environment and Climate Action. A septic licence will be required from the EPA, as at capacity, the site will need to treat 54,000 litres of effluent. The EPA and CFA provided comments on the application and did not object. DECA did not object to the application subject to conditions, and Parks Victoria did not object. However, they still have concerns regarding the potential additional inflows of stormwater that may affect the sensitive ecology of Serendip Sanctuary. Council's internal referrals, environmental health, parks, tourism, and building services departments did not object to the application, with some subject to conditions. Environmentally Sustainable Development Department provided conditions for the application. However, they were concerned whether the ESD policy and requirements had been correctly applied to this type of development. Notably, Council's Civil Infrastructure and Environment departments are not supportive of the application. Civil infrastructure concerns relate to the drainage outcomes not being resolved. Council's Environment team are concerned about the extent of native vegetation that will realistically be retained once development commences. They are also concerned with the potential for consequential loss of native vegetation that has not been accounted for through the application process. Both the environment and civil infrastructure teams have outstanding concerns that the change to any levels of stormwater flows may have an impact to the significant ecological environment within Serendip Sanctuary. This may result in untreated stormwater, leading to further removal of native vegetation. The application has been assessed against the relevant parts of the Geelong Planning Scheme, which include the Municipal Planning Strategy, the Planning Policy Framework, including the Lara Structure Plan and the Settlement Policy for Greater Geelong. The settlement policy speaks to discouraging land use and development outside the Lara settlement boundary. This ties into the Lara Structure Plan, which is there to ensure the north of Lara is maintained for farming uses and to protect the rural landscape setting. Further to this, the assessment ties into the farming zone, which encourages agricultural land uses. And all these policies are underpinned by the Managing Development in Rural Areas planning policy. The application has been assessed against the before-mentioned planning policies, and overall, the assessment shows the land use and development is incompatible with the farming zone. Accommodation is incompatible in the farming zone, as people staying on the land would expect a certain level of peaceful amenity, when in reality, farming practices can be noisy, dusty, and run through the night. Harvesting can run early in the morning with large farming equipment such as tractors. These likely amenity concerns are unable to be controlled by council, given the farms can operate without a planning permit. The agricultural land uses are located correctly in the farming zone. The proposal is an intensive urban development proposed in an area that is being farmed by all adjoining properties. The application will impact on agricultural land uses that are encouraged by the farming zone. Agriculture and farming practices are limited to the zones and areas within the municipality, compared to a camping and caravan park, which is an urban accommodation use that could be more easily located elsewhere that will not impact on existing farming practices. The application is inconsistent with the Lara Structure Plan, which seeks to maintain farming uses and the rural landscape settings north of the Lara settlement boundary, which is Windermere Road. The Structure Plan also seeks to ensure that key views to the north, such as the You Yangs, are protected. The managing development in rural area policy encourages camping and caravan parks within the Ballerine area. The policy suggests unique eco-cabin type accommodation within the north of Geelong, accommodation that is low scale. The scale and intensity of this development is not appropriate for the farming zone and is not low scale. Whilst it has been raised that accommodation is lacking within Lara, the proposal before the Planning Committee is an intensive urban use, removing the site from agriculture and has the potential to impact adjoining farms. The farming zone does allow us to consider non-agricultural land uses, but only where these uses will not adversely affect the existing farms. Given the high intensity and large scale of development, it is not certain that no adverse impacts will occur. The local settlement policy for Greater Geelong makes specific mention to protecting agricultural land, particularly to the north of Lara. It also makes specific mention to discouraging land use and development outside the Lara settlement boundary, where this would prejudice the retention of the rural landscape setting. Both points the application fails. On balance, having considered the proposal and how it will impact on the agricultural land uses, how it is located in an area sought to protect the rural landscape, how it is outside the Lara settlement boundary, this large-scale accommodation land use is incompatible within the farming zone and inappropriate located according to the local planning policy for Lara. The application fails at all levels of the planning policy. Given all of this, as detailed within the report, it is Office's recommendation that the application be refused, subject to the grounds. If Planning Committee choose to support this application, this large-scale urban accommodation use will result in loss of agricultural land in an existing productive farming zone. The proposal will result in a detrimental impact to the rural setting of the area, and in particular, it will detrimentally impact the rural character in the north of Lara. Thank you.
Thank you, Verity. Okay, any questions from councillors of Verity? Everyone's good? Okay, thank you. So I'd like to now call on, first of all, Barry White to speak, please, in support of the application. Thank you, Barry.
Good evening, councillors. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Barry White. I've been chair of the Lara Care Group for quite a number of years, and I'm a 50-year resident on acreage north of Lara, so we know the area very well. Our 30-plus members are all Lara residents and are familiar with the region and this proposed development. We support this proposal, which we believe responds to an opportunity and a need and will be transformative for our region. As background, developing regional tourism has been a major objective for many years. The You Yangs Region Tourism Plan in 2017 involved Tourism Greater Geelong, Avalon Airport, the Wathaurong Aboriginal Cooperative, commercial tour operators and our own group. It highlighted many regional tourism opportunities such as the Avalon Air Show, wineries to the west, Brisbane Ranges, Fairy Park, Mount Rothwell and the Earth Sanctuary to the north, Ramsar wetlands, and of course also access to restaurants, cafes and visitor attractions in and around Lara. In 2020, the draft You Yangs Precinct Master Plan was released by government, focusing on the You Yangs and Serendip Sanctuary. In 2021, Council adopted a notice of motion and noted, I quote, tourism in the north of Geelong has been left behind without a low-cost camping facility which would benefit the You Yangs, Serendip, Anakie and Little River. Without this, travellers will continue through rather than travel to our region, with lost economic opportunities for tourism growth and development. In 2022, the government committed $11 million to implement the You Yangs Precinct Master Plan. But while these studies and plans highlighted tourism opportunities in the region, there was one key element missing: accommodation to enable visitors to stay longer in the region, visit more regional attractions and support the local economy. More recently, of course, the Spirit of Tasmania ferry service has added significant increased demand for short-stay travel accommodation. The caravan park and accommodation facility is central to these regional attractions and is located on Forest Road North, which is the main tourist route connecting Lara, Serendip and the You Yangs. As noted, it is a farm zone Section 2 use requiring a permit and impact assessment. We know the area, we do not believe that the facility would negatively impact farming. Most surrounding commercial agriculture is broadacre cropping, concentrated mainly to the east of Forest Road and Flinders Avenue, and would not be compromised. We are particularly sensitive to any potential environmental impacts on Serendip Sanctuary. This has been a priority for our group for many years, and we do not believe that the caravan park operations would have a detrimental impact on wildlife or breeding. We know concerns about traffic and have been working with Council to upgrade Sandy Creek Road to divert heavy quarry trucks from Forest Road to the north. This would reduce heavy truck traffic passing the proposed caravan park and also the residents on Forest Road North and, as it happens, Windermere Road. We've also provided input during design of the caravan park for safe traffic entry and exit arrangements onto Forest Road North. We're also aware of dangers to cyclists using Forest Road North, which we acknowledge is a dangerous connector between Lara and the Uyangs, and have been working with council engineers on the Geelong-Lara Uyangs bike network to connect Lara, Serendip and the Uyangs via Flinders Avenue North. Finally, this is a much-needed opportunity for our region. We are fortunate to have private investors who are prepared to invest millions of dollars to establish a high-quality and professionally managed facility, and we strongly commend this application for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Barry. I'd like to call on Jeffrey Wilkes. Is he here? No? Okay. If that's the case, I'd like to call on Josh Trowell on behalf of the applicant. Thank you, Josh.
Thank you, Chair and committee members. We appreciate the opportunity to respond on behalf of the permit applicant. My name's Josh Trowell, I'm a town planning consultant, and I'm joined tonight by Dean Hinch, who's the permit applicant and owner of the property at 325 Forest Road North in Lara. This proposal for a camping and caravan park has been carefully located and designed to meet tourism needs, support local businesses, and integrate sustainable land management practices. In terms of my submission, firstly, I'd like to give you a much clearer overview and a bigger picture of what this proposal means for Geelong and for the region, some of which you've already heard from Barry this evening. I'll then draw your attention to the broader strategic directions and the overarching objectives that we feel are relevant for Council to consider in relation to this proposal. Finally, I'll then briefly address the grounds of refusal that have been put to you in the Council Officer's report, and in turn further demonstrate to you why this application warrants your approval, subject to appropriate planning permit conditions. So this proposal represents a huge opportunity for Geelong, but particularly for our northern region and for the township of Lara. This is a proposal for a $10 million tourism development, providing over 60 new permanent ongoing jobs and providing accommodation every year for what we estimate could be 50,000 visitors to this region. Strategically located between the Uyangs and Serendip, this precinct draws in more than 470 people annually, and that number is steadily growing, and with international flights coming back to Avalon, there will be an even greater number of international visitors to our region. The key visitor challenges that we face here, and this is picked up in Council's Sustainable Destination Master Plan, is that the majority of people who visit this part of our region do so as part of a day trip. And the reason that we can't turn these day trips into overnight stays is simply because there are effectively not enough places to stay, particularly for families or people with caravans. So visitors spend a day soaking up the amazing experience of the Uyangs and Serendip, but they go elsewhere to spend their money on accommodation, food and other goods and services. The Spirit of Tasmania is another strategic opportunity that this proposal can support. 20,000 caravans and more than 10,000 motorhomes come across every year and often need somewhere to stay the night prior or after the trip from Tassie. This proposal for a camping and caravan park in Lara will provide 118 accommodation sites, including 56 cabins and 62 camping, caravan and motorhome sites. All accommodation will be eco-friendly with a high emphasis on sustainability, the site's rural context and the natural environment. There will also be opportunities for various functions of the camping caravan park to direct guests to engage with local businesses for various goods and services, noting that for every dollar of revenue equates to an average of another $1.38 that's spent back in the local community. Now, if I can, I'd like to draw your attention to some of the higher level strategic directions that are provided in the Greater Geelong Planning Scheme. Council's municipal planning strategy is integral to the assessment of this application and almost a starting point, if you like, in terms of whether a proposal is aligning with Council's overall vision and strategic directions. From there, the relevant planning policies become more of a blueprint, if you like, to put the plan into practice. However, we feel that every assessment of a planning permit application should be brought back to these strategic directions, and a line-by-line policy assessment is not always the right approach. The municipal planning strategy provides a helpful summary regarding tourism and its importance to the Geelong region. It also emphasises the need to manage and design tourism developments in rural areas so that they don't compromise the landscape, avoid significant impacts to agricultural productivity, and don't seek to urbanise rural areas. In terms of satisfying these directions, we firstly say that this proposal will maintain, but more importantly enhance, agricultural productivity on the land. This will be achieved by establishing a 3-hectare olive grove in conjunction with the proposed caravan park. This decision to establish olives on the site has been based on expert advice from an agricultural consultant and a soil scientist, who have advised that this would be the most effective form of agriculture that we can provide on the land, which would effectively integrate with our proposal, particularly for water reuse on the site. In terms of any visual impacts on the rural landscape, this proposal will provide a relatively low scale of built form and spacing around all buildings, along with being provided with extensive native landscaping and new tree planting, like what you would typically see in most great examples of well-managed caravan parks. Therefore, we don't see this proposal in any way negatively impacting the landscape characteristics or impacting any key view lines. The proposed cabins and other buildings have also been architecturally designed to blend in with the existing rural character of the area and the natural environment. We also don't believe that a camping and caravan park is an urban land use or a development which should be regarded as urbanisation. In fact, throughout Victoria, many councils appropriately regard camping and caravan parks as not urban uses and encourage them in rural and green wedge areas. I'd now like to briefly respond to the grounds of refusal which have been outlined in the Council Officer's report. Firstly, in terms of the first ground, I think that we need to emphasise that the farming zone does not prohibit tourism uses, including camping and caravan parks. It provides council with the discretion to allow them where they complement rural character and manage land in a way which is sustainable. We say that our proposal does exactly that. In terms of refusal grounds numbered as 2, 3, 4 and 5, we provide the following key points for your consideration. Firstly, this proposal will enhance agricultural productivity and will be associated with an agricultural use on the land. To put this into context, the land is currently not farmed and now will be farmed. In fact, our proposal will ensure that a high proportion of the site area remains used for farming purposes into the future. On to the next point, we say that this proposal can be effectively managed in a way that does not affect any existing farming operations in the area. Our proposal has been designed to provide separation, including a combination of agricultural and landscape buffers, to all property boundaries, and we don't believe that the intensity of nearby farming operations is likely to cause any adverse impacts on our proposed caravan park. The points made in the officer's report that our site does not provide a connection or access to a tourist facility, tourist attraction or any outdoor recreation, we just completely disagree with this. The comments also provided in the officer's report that Forest Road North is not a tourist route to the You Yangs are also, in our view, incorrect assumptions. With regard to some of the other grounds of refusal, I think they're numbered as 6 and 7, we note that these are all issues which can be easily addressed through conditions in a planning permit. Clarification on where native grasses are located and how they can be avoided can be included in approval documentation after a planning permit's granted. Equally, how stormwater can be effectively managed is also something that, in our view, can be easily designed and managed to the satisfaction of the Council's drainage engineers. In closing, Council as the responsible authority needs to make decisions which often require a balance to be struck between competing objectives. Which side that decision ultimately then lands on needs to be based on whether a proposal will or won't provide a net community benefit. In this case, we say that the concerns and issues being raised do not outweigh the benefits associated with this proposal and the broader strategic need for council to support projects like this one. Thank you.
Josh, do any of the councillors have any questions or anything they'd like clarified by Josh? Councillor Contel.
Thanks, Joss. Look, the one concern that I have, and I've seen it on a number of occasions in the City of Greater Geelong, is the farming zone and then how you can operate harmoniously into the future. I know you touched on it, but I wouldn't mind some more clarification. The one thing I would consider concerning going forward is if those that are farming today are negatively impacted by the caravan park in the future, where we're then all of a sudden starting to get phone calls from the caravan park saying we need to do something to restrict dust, we need to do something to restrict the operations of these farms, they're ploughing or whatever they're doing at night, there's heavy machinery, there's beeping from the reverse beepers. That would really frustrate me going forward. So I really want to understand that tonight before we make our decision on how that's going to be dealt with, because in 5 years' time, we may be a whole new group of people here.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you. We'd absolutely consider an operational management plan or something like that in a planning permit condition. So we think that would be the appropriate mechanism for council to be able to be comfortable with how we could manage the caravan park and ensure that those impacts are taken into account. The surrounding farming uses, as you've heard, are broad acre farming uses, so cropping type activities. So part of our management plan could be looking at those peak seasons where those farming operations are doing harvesting or work, and making sure that there's a management plan in place to manage those expectations from guests and those particular impacts. So that's we had an agricultural consultant engaged as part of the process, and that was something that was recommended through that process, that if council was to grant a planning permit, that an operational management plan could look at some of those impacts and make sure that they're all addressed, I guess.
Broken.
Chair, one of the major objections that have been used by the officer's recommendation is the potential impact of stormwater runoff from the site location. Are you able to go into more detail what your assessments have actually said about that, and how you can try to address, you're attempting to try to address that?
Yeah. So all stormwater can be managed on the site. So there is a large, if you look at the site plan, there is a large stormwater basin that will cater for the majority of all stormwater. Council's engineers requested that we look at the worst case scenario, such as a 1 in 100 year flood event, where water may, if it hits the capacity of that stormwater basin, might need to discharge. And that's why the road reserve was then looked at in terms of water would need to go down the road reserve, and ultimately potentially how far it needed to go depending on the amount of flow of water end up in Serendip. So we engaged a secondary engineering consulting firm that looked at how the discharge might be managed, and they weren't concerned with any of the discharge of water. They actually said that it's, compared to some of the flows of water that aren't managed from farming properties into Serendip, it's actually a better outcome that it's managed through grass swales into the reserve rather than what's probably happening there at the moment. So they said the water quality wouldn't be an issue, and that can all be addressed in detailed drainage documentation to council's engineers, so that everyone's fully comfortable with the outcome.
Any further questions, councillors? No? Thank you, Josh, and thank you to Barry as well, who spoke as well. Okay, we have a recommendation before us on page 7 of the report, that the responsible authority, having considered all matters which the Planning and Environment Act of 1987 requires it to consider, decides to refuse to grant a planning permit for the use and development of the land for a camping and caravan park and removal of vegetation at 325 Forest Road, North Lara, on the grounds outlined in attachment 1 of the council report. Do I have a mover for that motion? The movers? As we don't have a mover for that motion has lapsed. So I may ask if there is any alternate motion that would be moved. Councillor Aiken.
I would like to move an alternative motion, Mr Chair. And
You
that,
have a seconder?
yeah.
Councillor Person? Councillor Aiken.
And before I just speak to the motion, the motion I intend, that I'm moving now is that the local responsible planning authority decides to issue a notice of decision to grant a planning permit for the use and development of land for camping and caravan park and removal of vegetation. Yeah.
Now I should have asked the seconder. Sorry, I preempted that a little bit, but Councillor Person has seconded. Please continue, Councillor Aiken.
Just to give some broader background information, look, the councillors have read the full 112-page report that's associated with this proposal, so I think it's really important for those people here and also online to understand there has been a significant amount of information that's been presented before the council group. As councillors, we're making this decision because we can actually consider much more broader than what officers can in terms of reaching a balanced decision in terms of this particular item. What is really important about this one is that we did receive 12 formal objections, but we also received 15 support formally for this proposal as well too. And an interesting supporter of this project who's actually spoken tonight was Barry White from the Lara Care Group. The Lara Care Group actually has a very strong history of protecting good planning and livability in Lara, and in fact has been a regular presenter and objector to planning applications before the City of Greater Geelong associated with the Lara community. And I actually do think it does place significant weight that organisation, which has been a custodian of good sustainable environmental planning in Lara, has been a significant champion of the natural assets in Lara, in particular Serendip and the You Yangs, has strongly come out in favour of this proposal. If any organisation of Lara or individuals were going to be objecting on environmental grounds, it would have been the Lara Care Group, but they have presented that they are extremely strong supporter of this proposal. We have, as councillors, we can assist us in making our decision to actually consider our local knowledge, and many of us do know that particular site and know that it currently isn't farmed, has been mentioned. We also know that the majority of traffic that actually accesses the You Yangs travels along Forest Road North. So in our classification of our opinion of what is a significant tourist route, it does meet that because that's actually the main route that you do get to the You Yangs. And of course our local knowledge is also gives us ability to respond to the questions about amenity and impact on neighbouring properties. And I am quite confident based on that information that there is net community benefit by having this proposal granted by this particular council. I know there's been mention about strategies in particular driving our decision tonight. One of them, which is quite significant, and that is the Tourism Greater Geelong and the Ballerine. In November 2023, they adopted their latest 10-year tourism destination master plan for Geelong. And for the first time, they actually identified the sub-region of Avalon and You Yangs as a major tourist potential opportunity. But what they said in that document, and it wasn't hidden, the first sentence that they actually made associated with the strategy in Avalon and the You Yangs was that many visitors are travelling from Avalon and to the You Yangs for a day trip and Serendip. There are very few accommodation options, and this is limiting the ability to turn these day trips into overnight stays. That's actually the first sentence that they've said about the Avalon and You Yangs area. So in fact, they've made it quite clear that accommodation and the lack of it is the major reason why tourism is not being activated in that particular sub-region. Well, we've actually got an opportunity tonight as councillors to actually respond to that. We have an investor that is saying that they will put a minimum of $10 million and start addressing the accommodation concerns to build a tourism precinct in the northern parts of Geelong. And as a consequence, it will meet that particular strategy. It will also meet the broader, and it will align an outcome with Council's own strategic direction and vision about attracting investment, attracting growth, and actually, importantly for me, someone who comes from the northern parts of Geelong, activating employment opportunities which are sustainable and environmentally friendly to the broader community. So I actually believe as a council group, we acknowledge that we acknowledge the professionalism of our planning officers and the conclusion that they've presented before us, but it is only a recommendation. That's actually why we have this planning process in Victoria and in Geelong, that officers do just make recommendation to the councillors, but councillors can assess other strategic plans, local knowledge, and other nuances to reach their conclusions that they do make. And I actually believe that the recommendation that I've put forward to grant a notice of decision for a planning permit, it actually has 39 clauses in it to address concerns that have been raised by officers from our civic infrastructure area, from our engineering area, and also from our planning area. And because those issues can be addressed, it is appropriate for the council to be granting permit for this particular application, and I look forward to hearing responses from my fellow councillors in relation to the proposal that's before us tonight.
Councillor Aitken. Councillor Burson.
I'd like to back up what Councillor Aitken said. The local knowledge part is a big thing, I think. Like one of my biggest concerns when I was running for the spot in the council was accommodation and stuff. So caravans were being parked on the side of the road, people that were waiting for the Spirit of Tasmania, where if you drive from Lara, you go down through the back way and then you go through North Shore, you find little pockets of little camping grounds that are set up already that are obviously not real camping grounds, but there's little parks there where you'll get 2 or 3 caravans, and then at one point there was around 30 of them that I saw. I don't know what happened there, but they're making little villages and stuff, so there's a place for that. Literally 30 metres from my house there was a caravan there for 6 weeks. Obviously I went and asked them what they were doing because they were staying there for 3 days, and they said their boat had been changed, so they were just living out near my house, which is just obviously the urban area. I'm also really keen to hear about how they're going to manage stuff, as to Councillor Contell saying, I hate giving people an inch and then they take a mile. So I love the idea that there's going to be a caravan park. However, going forward, is it then going to hinder the farmers being able to, like you can't cut your crops between this and this time, etc. So I'm glad that there's going to be a management plan that realises that they're sort of jumping into the farming area rather than the farmers have to adapt to how they're doing things. I do also think it would be really beneficial for the farmers to have accommodation, because if people aren't going to stay there whilst it's a harvesting period, who's going to stay there? Probably the interstate people that come to do harvesting, because they turn up for 3 months, run a bunch of programs, and they go to the next place. So they're temporary people as well. Also, the underground storage of water, I think, is amazing. We probably need to do a lot more of that in Geelong, being that we flood and then we have dry spells. I like the idea of that being used towards agriculture, which is in the area, which again is meeting one of the obligations of it is still being used partly for agriculture, which keeps in the being with the area. I love that nothing's 15 stories tall, it's not obstructing any views, but the main issue I have has been accommodation and seeing a whole bunch of RVs and caravans and people being stuck without accommodation because they don't want to leave Anglesea at 5 in the morning to catch their trip in the morning. Net community benefit, I think we haven't leaned enough in on the You Yangs. When you drive out of the You Yangs, a lot of the time you just go back through Little River and then you head off, whereas now if we come and we stay here, the local town centre, ideally we'll get a lot more traffic. We've talked about getting signs that go from the You Yangs to the point where Lara is. I've had people ask me where the town centre is when they're literally driving past and they've got no idea where it is. So from the You Yangs, being that there's a lot of traffic there, that'll be great as well. And obviously anything to do with Serendip is whatever Barry says goes. He knows more about that than anybody else does in Serendip. So if Barry's supportive of it not being an issue at Serendip, then I'm happy to back him on that. yeah, I think the overall net community benefit, I think, is definitely outweighing the people of Lara rather than not.
Thank you, Councillor Burson. Any other councillors wish to speak on the motion? Councillor Quintel.
Sorry, Councillor Kados. I'm supportive of the proposal and the alternate at large, or by and large, and I'm encouraged by all of the positives that have been discussed tonight, whether it be tourism, whether it be employment, the van storage that Councillor Burson talks about is real. That situation is real. We are seeing more and more vans parked in and around the streets of Geelong because of lack of storage facilities or camping facilities. But I would emphasise just one last time and encourage the applicant to aspire to be a great neighbour of the farming community. I think it would be looked upon really dimly if at the first opportunity that there was requests to restrict operation of the current farming community in that area. I'd hate to see a quarry road type of situation where we know how the cliche is, there's been a quarry there forever, you have someone move into the street and all of a sudden they're objecting to the quarry. Need to find a way to work in harmoniously with that industry. It's a really important industry. It's something that we value, and again, I just encourage the applicant really to aspire to be a great neighbour.
Thank you, Councillor Quintel. Councillor Stretch Quintel, please.
I also will be supporting the recommendation of Councillor Aiken. I was impressed with the case that you put. I was also impressed by the Barry White of Landcare Group. Like Councillor Aiken said, if there was a group that was going to object to this development, it's that one. I've been a very big proponent for development in Geelong. I really feel that this is needed in the Lara area. The Avalon precinct is going to become the engine room, not only for Geelong but for Victoria, and accommodation is going to be sorely needed in the area. It's going through a transition. As Councillor Eddie Quintel said, we still must respect the legacy of farming, and I likewise don't want to see complaints coming from this facility about trucks and farm equipment moving around this area, because it's there, and if you choose to put a development like this in that area, then you have to accept the consequence, like someone buying a house near an airport and then complaining. I don't want to hear those complaints, because I think this project is a very positive one. In the past, this panel has been criticised for rejecting officer recommendations that were in favour of development, and perversely tonight we're potentially going to reject officer recommendations that are rejecting development, yet the panel seems to be of a view that this project is appropriate. So I think that's a great sign. It shows that Geelong is open for business. Where we have a proposal that is quality, that is appropriate, it's fit for purpose, and we have a developer who has the funds and the vision to create something very positive that's going to be an enabler for economic development, then I'm all in favour. So I'll be supporting the recommendation that was put forward by fellow Councillor Aiken this evening.
Councillor Quintel. Any other councillors wish to speak? Before I go back to Councillor Aiken to close, I'd just like to highlight there's no condition for a management plan in the alternate motion. Is that something that you would like to add in, just to give that surety on the applicant has said they would be happy to come up with one? Councillor Aiken, would you be happy to?
Yep.
We'd put it as
accept
1F.
that amendment, if that's the recommendation from the officers as well too, because I believe that's come from the officers tonight, listening to the debate that's actually occurred. So as the mover, I'm prepared to second. I'm not sure if Chris is the seconder. Essentially,
1F would become there is a condition put in for a management plan of the site. Yeah? Okay. So comfortable? Seconder, Councillor Burson, you're comfortable with that amendment? Okay. Great. Any other councillors wish to speak on that amendment? No? Councillor Aiken to close.
I'll close the debate. Look, the significance of what's actually, if we do grant a permit tonight, is, I know the word transformative has been actually made. This will actually be the first caravan park in the northern parts of Geelong. And in fact will be the first new caravan park in over 70 years in the Geelong region. So that's how significant it is, the decision that you're making tonight as councillors. And why is it important that we do have additional caravan and camping opportunities? Well, you just had to look at the Tourism Greater Geelong and Ballerine strategy, which identified it as the first most important issue to activate the Avalon and Newyangs area. But from someone who's come from the northern suburbs, we actually have caravans out there now, but all we do is we store them for the rest of Geelong. What I'm really excited about is that for the first time ever, someone will be able to come off the Spirit of Tasmania, drive their caravan out to the northern parts of Geelong and actually stay overnight and actually participate in the beautiful assets and activities that we do have in our northern parts of Geelong. So essentially for the last 70 years you've been denied that opportunity to do that. If you want to go to the Newyangs, if you want to go to Serendip, if you want to go to the Hoffman Walk, if you want to actually even go to Avalon, essentially even as the planning officer report said, oh, we can go down the Ballerine. Well, as a proud person who represents the northern suburbs, for the first time ever, I'll be able to tell people, no, you don't have to go to the Ballerine to stay overnight. You don't have to actually go off the Spirit of Tasmania and drive at least 40 minutes to find a caravan park. You can actually do that in the northern suburbs of Geelong, and that alone gives me the confidence that this is the right thing to be doing for the community and the right thing for the council group to be doing as well too.
Councillor Aitken. With that, I'll put the alternative motion to the vote. Those in favour? It is carried unanimously, as the Mayor would say. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your attendance this evening. And hang on a sec, let me go back to the script, because I do have to follow a script at some stage. So that now concludes the matters for consideration this evening, and I call the meeting closed at 6:48 p.m. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Well done, Councillor Caddis.
Bring Andrew.
Yeah,
Thank you.
very efficient, very efficient.